Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has highlighted Egypt's diplomatic efforts to mediate between the United States and Iran, aiming to prevent escalation. President el-Sisi emphasized that Egypt, as part of the region, is directly affected by the current crises and firmly rejects any aggression against neighboring countries. He warned of the wide-ranging consequences of war on regional stability, trade, and strategic choke points like the Suez Canal and Strait of Hormuz. He stressed the importance of national unity, preparedness, and resilience, reassuring citizens that Egypt has taken precautions to mitigate economic and security impacts. He reaffirmed Egypt's support for the Arab and Gulf partners while advocating for de-escalation and dialogue as the path to peace. Egypt closely monitors rising military tensions, expressing solidarity with the Arab nations, urging diplomacy and activating national measures to safeguard security and critical infrastructure. And once again, for further analysis, we're joined from occupied Jerusalem by the Israeli affairs expert, Dr. Ismail El-Muslimani. Welcome, sir, to Qnews. Sir, how would you summarize the recent U.S.-Israeli military operations targeting Iran?
Good morning to everyone. The strikes are really precise from both sides. With what's happening in Tehran is far worse and is on a larger scale, on a political level and on a military level. State organizations and infrastructure were also hit. Whereas in Israel, Iran's strike yesterday was the most sensitive one and the most expected one as well, and it got back the balance of power. What happened in May? The rescue teams are still trying to find missing Israelis. We've seen casualties and tens injured, and then also we've seen Tel Aviv buildings getting hit. And so the strikes are so far really precise, and they have clear targets. And so both sides here are trying to just hit it where it hurts. The U.S. focuses or is focusing on a nuclear program, and Israel is focusing on officials and state buildings, so that they can prevent any plans of getting new officials or new signs, because this can actually get really complicated, and in Iran they now have a three member council, and we have heard one of them is the chief justice, one of them is an IRGC member, and until they can get a new leadership that consists of 80 members. And so, as I said, the strikes are really precise, and in Israel, the media isn't covering enough about what happened, or about the buildings that were targeted by Iran, but you can tell that they attacked sensitive buildings and sensitive points, but Israel isn't allowing anyone to share any kind of media, photos or videos, and so on.
How serious is the impact of the missile and drone strikes on Iranian infrastructure, if you can tell us, please?
It is very clear. It is very clear that lots of organizations and institutions that were severely destroyed by these strikes. But as you know, Iran has a strategic depth. They have they cover an area of 1 million meters squared, and so their geography is actually what's allowing Iran to just hold up in the face of all of this. And a good proof of this is the sirens blaring in Tel Aviv and in Israel. Just half an hour ago, there were sirens blaring in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem, and this means that Iran is carrying out more strikes, and as I said, their geography is helping them. And so yes, they have endured some destructions in building and institutions, but they are still carrying out their strikes.
And how effective are the international condemnations in de-escalating the tensions?
Up till now, the condemnations aren't that powerful, and they haven't had any real impact, even though the Security Council held a meeting, and the Iranian representative has said that they are really upset about the girls' school that has witnessed a killing of 160 girls, and that this actually goes against all humanitarian rules, and then also targeting lots of officials, including the supreme leader. Things have gone beyond a line, especially after Iran has targeted U.S. bases in Gulf countries, where U.S. bases are located, and things have got more complicated and more sensitive now. And so Iran understands that attacking U.S. bases in the Gulf countries is actually beneficial, whereas the Arab countries are really upset about this, including Oman, which was a mediator between Tehran and Washington, by the way. And so, as I said, the condemnations are muted so far and mild, and maybe behind closed doors. It is said that Qatar and Oman have been talking about further negotiations, and it was said that Italy and Turkey are also involved. But as I said, these are back channel talks, and we don't know anything yet. But I think that they can actually get things in control before there is a broader war and a broader spillover.
Dr. Musalmani, how can this escalation impact the global oil markets and the energy security?
Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz and has prevented any ship from passing, and has actually sent warnings to ships. And this is actually a very important important strait and for trade, and actually prices have started to go up since the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, and this will cause further surge in oil prices. We've seen barrel prices going up to more than $80 actually, and so this can threaten energy and oil sectors in the world, and this is one of the sensitive files that the Arab countries are really affected by, and they think that this is as bad as it can get, basically.
And
when it
from
comes
the occupied Jerusalem, that was Dr. Ismail El-Musalmani, the Israeli affairs expert. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Qnews. The Gulf Cooperation Council has strongly condemned Iran's missile and drone attacks, vowing to take all necessary measures to defend member states. The attacks targeting the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan caused significant damage to the civilian infrastructure and residential areas, posing a direct threat to citizen safety. The GCC emphasized that an attack on one member constitutes an attack on all, reaffirming the right to self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. While praising the professionalism of the member states' armed forces and air defenses, the Council warned of severe consequences if hostilities continue. It urged an immediate halt to attacks and called on the international community to condemn them, and stressed that diplomacy and dialogue remain the only path to regional security and stability. And for more updates on the latest developments, we now move to Pasant Shhaita in our newsroom. Pasant.
Thank you, Salma. You're still watching Qnews, bringing you the latest regional and international developments. And here are the top stories making headlines this hour. Israeli media has reported that approximately 6 rockets were fired from Lebanon in the latest barrage. Security sources confirmed that the attacks by Hezbollah did not come as a surprise, following a series of recent operational assessments and contingency plans. Officials emphasized that Hezbollah was responsible for the rocket fire, warning that Israel's response would be severe. In reaction, the Israeli army has launched a new wave of airstrikes across Lebanon, signaling a significant escalation in the ongoing conflict and heightened tensions along the northern border. Authorities remain on high alert as both sides prepare for potential further exchanges, marking one of the most intense periods of confrontation since the last ceasefire agreement. The Israeli army has ordered the immediate evacuation of several villages in southern Lebanon following recent rocket fire. Israel's chief of staff convened a high-level assessment with military leadership, stating that Hezbollah initiated a battle against Israel and bears full responsibility for the escalation. Authorities warned that anyone threatening Israeli security will pay a heavy price. So far, there have been no reports of injuries from rockets targeting Haifa. Sirens continue to sound in multiple northern towns amid fears of drone infiltration. Haifa's mayor emphasized that the rocket launches from Lebanon represent a serious development requiring urgent response and resolution, as Israel maintains heightened vigilance along its northern border. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has condemned the rocket launches from southern Lebanon, calling them irresponsible and suspicious. Salam warned that such attacks provide Israel with pretext for escalation and stressed that Lebanon will not allow the country to be dragged into new dangerous adventures. In response to the unfolding situation, Salam has called an urgent emergency session at the presidential palace this morning to assess the latest developments and coordinate national measures. Lebanese authorities are closely monitoring the situation as tensions along the northern border rise, emphasizing the need for restraint and careful management to prevent further escalation. And that brings us to the end of our top stories for now. Stay with us for continued updates, expert analysis, and latest developments right here on Q News.
US and Israeli strikes widen across Iran following the killing of its supreme leader. The Middle East is teetering on an unprecedented escalation. Iran has responded with missile and drone attacks on Israel and US bases across the Gulf. Uncertainty remains over how far this confrontation will spread or whether diplomacy can curb rising violence. Can diplomatic pressure calm this rapidly expanding confrontation? What are the legal and political ramifications of the escalating strikes? And how will this war affect the Middle East? These are the questions we're going to try and answer on this special coverage of Q News. I'm Henny Saif. Stay tuned. The global oil prices have risen after at least 3 ships were attacked near the Strait of Hormuz as Iran continues to launch strikes across the Middle East in response to ongoing attacks by the US and Israel. 2 vessels have been struck and an unknown projectile was reported to have exploded in very close proximity to a third, the UK Maritime Trade Operations Centre has announced. Iran has warned ships not to pass through the strait, which carries about 20% of the world's oil and gas. International shipping has almost come to a standstill at the strait's entrance, with analysts warning that a prolonged conflict could push energy prices even higher. Economists warn that prolonged instability could trigger a new wave of global inflation, pushing up fuel and commodity prices worldwide. Markets remain volatile as investors weigh the potential for further escalation and its broader impact on international trade and economic growth. Several marine insurers are cancelling war risk insurance coverage for ships operating in Iranian waters, the Gulf and surrounding areas as tensions continue to escalate in the Middle East. The move comes amid heightened security risks near strategic shipping lanes, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz, a critical corridor for global oil and gas supplies. Insurers say the growing threat to commercial vessels has made coverage in these zones increasingly difficult to sustain. As a result, ship owners may face sharply higher premiums or be forced to seek special buyback arrangements at significantly increased costs to reinstate the limited protection. Industry analysts warn that the withdrawal of coverage could disrupt key trade routes, raising shipping and freight costs and add further pressure to global energy markets. If vessels reroute or delay transit through the Gulf, the impact could extend to supply chains worldwide, potentially pushing up fuel, food and commodity prices. The insurance sector's reaction underscores the mounting economic consequences of the ongoing conflict. Heavy US-Israeli strikes continue across Iran, centered on Tehran. Iran's government has declared national mourning after the reported death of its supreme leader and top officials. In retaliation, Iranian forces launched missiles and drones towards Israel and US bases in the Middle East. Global powers, including China and Russia, have condemned the strikes and urged a return to diplomatic talks. Travel disruptions and regional tensions are rising. For a clearer insight, we're joined from Paris by Dr. Majid Boudin, the international law professor and from Cairo by Mr. Talat Taha, the political analyst. Gentlemen, welcome to our Q News special coverage. Mr. Taha, after the confirmed death of Iran's supreme leader in a joint US-Israeli strike on Tehran, global powers called for de-escalation. From a diplomatic perspective, what are the realistic pathways to hold this widening conflict?
It is very clear that war is, this is just the beginning of the war. We have weeks to come because the US wants escalation and not Iran. And so we need to consider new ways. We need a new path and not just, give into this destructive war. And it is also very clear that Trump, from Trump's statement when he said that maybe we had around 4 or 5 weeks of war, this shows that he wants escalation, and so we need to go back to the negotiations table. And Oman is already working towards that and putting in efforts. There are negotiations between Oman and Iran, and maybe the US will go back to the negotiations table, but I think that the conditions will be totally different from before. The US had some conditions before, and Iran had this kind of survival suit, fearing the US bullets, but now things are different. Now Iran will have the upper hand, or will have some conditions that they can impose on the US, or maybe they can just stop the US. Whenever they are close to reaching a ceasefire. Even before the war, there were some US conditions around 4 or 5. The US was saying that they either accept these conditions or they'll go to war. And so I don't think that their conditions will be met now. And but in my opinion, I don't think that negotiations will be easily successful, because there were negotiations before, and their only hope was war, basically.
Dr. Boudin, the killing of Iran's supreme leader is unprecedented and a turning point in this US-Israeli conflict with Tehran. Iran has launched retaliatory strikes on Israel and US bases in the region. Is this a justified reaction from Tehran? How do you read this from an international law standpoint?
Normally, these kind of disputes should be resolved by negotiations, and this is why the international community is calling for reestablishing the process of negotiations. But the killing of the supreme chief of the Iranian regime is a game changer, and it is. If you take it from a strictly point of view, it's not expected from a superpower to launch an attack if they did not complete the negotiations process. But these are the elements of the actual situation, and the international community has taken it as such, a de facto situation. But there is a very important question here. Is the profile and the conduct of the Iranian regime and how this regime is regarded, is viewed, is perceived by the international community? This is why you see the European Union, you see France, you see the UK. They did not express any sympathy and they toward the Iranian regime, and they say if nobody will regret this killing. And this is a very important matter that must be taken into consideration when we make an analysis of the situation and when we see how things will develop. when you have a regime who is respecting international law, including the rights of its own population and its own people, you will see that the international community will stand with this regime. When we have a regime who doesn't respect its population and who is not respecting its international commitments, then even if this attack was not justified, in the momentum of this attack, they will find excuses or they will find pretexts to say, well, he has a part of the responsibility. And when we give some examples, what happened with Hamas, who has launched this disaster in Gaza, we have with the 7th of October, but they did not calculate the retaliation of the Israelis, which is a criminal retaliation. It was disproportionate. It was against international law. But now the Iranian regime, when you look at it from the broader, the bigger picture, they gave a pretext to Netanyahu to wipe out what, at least partially, at least in the brain of the people around. They have wiped out these massacres, horrible massacres in Gaza. Mm-hmm. When Hezbollah launching these attacks and the retaliation of Israel, and now again they are climbing, they are making another escalation, and they don't have the real tools to protect even their own populations. And so they are exposing their population. So then we find out that in reality, the Iranian regime is developing this race to the nuclear weapon for the protection of itself. So it's not to give a power to the Iranian people, but it's for own sake. So this is why they have lost this credibility and they have lost the sympathy. And sympathy is important. Credibility is important.
Yes. Mr. Taha, there are massive economic repercussions for the conflict that's taking place now. The oil and gas prices already reacting sharply due to the escalation. How serious is the risk of a new global inflation wave, especially if disruption spreads to the shipping routes, insurance costs that are rising, and supply chains are hit again?
Closing the Strait of Hormuz actually affected around 15% of the oil that was being supplied to the world, and so this will lead to maybe more than $100 per barrel, and if not more. And you know, the world economy cannot deal with this surge in prices. Prices are already hard, and then there is an economic crisis that can actually happen between 6 to 7% inflation rate, especially in the US and Europe, especially because Europe depends heavily on the Gulf countries' oil, and then there are ships and barrels that are in the Gulf countries, you know, even trucks carrying them just in the Gulf countries. And so this is why they sent French ships to protect them. And then now the straits and corridors are not safe. You know, the Houthis can also have control over the straits and corridors in Yemen, and so things will get really hard for the whole world and not just Europe and the US. And so this war on so many levels can affect all countries on a political, military, and economic level. War is getting broader, and things are escalating fast. War is erupting further, and so yeah, the as for Iran, um, the oil that was being exported to China was through Iran, and China depended almost only on Iran. They got around 95% of their oil from Iran, and so now they are really affected, and they can't get any more oil now. They depended on this, on so many or in so many industries, and as I said, there could be a risk of inflation or a surge in prices.
Dr. Boudin, if tensions threaten these strategic maritime corridors like the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea, how would these slowdowns and disruptions within these global trade arteries affect the food prices, the basic commodities, and overall stability worldwide? How soon and for how long do you think an effect of the disruptions for these routes would affect the prices globally?
This depends on 2 or 3 factors at least. First of all, how long this war will continue, and what are the perspectives, and exactly if there is a comprehensive deadline that can give certainty to the market. If there is a deadline, if there is a program to finish this war from both sides, and particularly from the Americans, who are controlling the Israelis in somehow, because the final decision is between the hands of President Trump. So if he has the obligation now, the duty, the responsibility to tell the world that it will be stopped in a certain date in a short-term period, in a very short term, this will reassure the world market. But also, he must draw the clear picture that he will support and he will not go against the Iranian population, who will not drop them. Last time there were a huge hope raised by what for the Iranians, but from President Trump, when he promised them that he will help them. But there were 30,000 killed people, and nobody has taken action here. Nobody has taken action to rescue them. So now the population are a little scared that there could be a retaliation. The Iranian people, and from the Iranian regime now, the Iranian regime, if they want to still stay in power, they must give real guarantees and effective measures to the Iranian population that their rights will be respected, and that it will not continue as before, and there will no be retaliation. And the Iranian regime must give also second guarantees to the international community that they will stick to the non-proliferation convention, and that they will restrict their enrichment of the uranium to the civil requirements. It means 3.69%, or if they want to go to the medical research, to 20%, and that they will take the 440 kilos and put them outside Iran under an international control. And here there is an opportunity to say that the Middle East region must be free from any nuclear possession, and that the Israel possessing the bomb must be put on the table of the negotiation. And then it will be a turning point. And So all these are the conditions that at least we'll have peace, a very short peace, a very short-term establishment of peace, and then you will see also as a consequence the stabilization of the market, the foods prices will not raise, the confidence will be reestablished, and the matter should be made now in a short-term settlement.
Yes. Mr. Taha, with Iran launching the missiles and drones towards U.S. bases in Israel in retaliation, what are or how big is the risk of this confrontation spilling over into a broader regional war and dragging other states into it?
The regional war has already started. At first, Iran attacked the Gulf countries, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, Qatar. They are just trying to make an enemy out of them, basically. And the Arab countries have never been enemies, at least for the past years. And they are attacking British bases and islands. And then we saw what Hezbollah did last night. They fired rockets, around 6 of them, at Israel. And Hezbollah has been silent, and because they chose Lebanon, they said that they will not go into war if it drags Lebanon along. And it's always been just between them and Israel. And so now with this action, Hezbollah has dragged Lebanon into this regional war, and Israel will be attacking them. Israel has threatened and has said that they'll be attacking Hezbollah officials and infrastructure and Lebanese infrastructure. And as I said, the targets and attacks will not just be on Hezbollah officials. It will be broader. And even though there is an agreement, Israel will still carry out violations and strikes. This is just Israel as we know it. And as for Lebanon is in a really dangerous situation. They have enough problems as is, and they are not ready to enter a war with Israel. And so this was a miscalculation from Hezbollah's side, actually. And then also in Erbil and Iraq, there are lots of rockets that are being launched in Erbil, and the US bases are being attacked there, in Jordan as well. And we've seen around 16 civilians getting injured because of rockets and strikes on Jordan, because they flew over Jordan's area. And so and then on the other hand, on the Asian side, that is really connected with the Middle East. And so this is a full-on war. Even Pakistan has said that they will enter war and will support Iran, but so far they haven't launched anything so far, even though they have arms. And so Pakistan has some kind of agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, and that they will have a political cooperation. And so under the Saudi Arabian cover, Saudi Arabia was hit. We've seen US bases in Riyadh being targeted, and so things are just chaotic and things are getting out of hand, and war will just be involving all the countries and having a spillover.
Dr. Boudeni, Iran has described the US-Israeli operation as unprovoked, illegal and legitimate, and we've seen global powers, including China and Russia, condemning the strikes and urging a return to diplomatic talks. Now, how do international law principles apply here? What sort of reaction, more reactions do you expect from the international community?
Well, this is a very complex problem, because also Iran has to respect the right to its own population to decide on their future. And this was prevented by the Iranian regime. And Iran did not respect the Non-Proliferation Convention. And when you put this on a balance, you see that the breach of international law from several sides, and therefore we have to find out a way out under international law. First, the Iranian regime must respect the right of its population for self-determination, because for 47 years, the people of Iran is the loser, and there is a repression which is unqualified, which is unacceptable, and they have to put at least a minimum of the rule of law in Iran to protect the freedom of the population. Second, that Iran must not launch attacks on the region, on its neighbor countries, all the Arab Gulf countries, Cyprus, Iraq, and all Oman, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait. Iran must stop this, because this is a reaction of panic. And it's not a reaction of, it's not a strategic reaction. And Iran must understand that there is a disruption of the equilibrium on the military side, and cannot face all these, the US, for instance, and must find a way out. But the regime is now defending its own existence. And this is why it's launching these attacks. But for the US now, there is an international responsibility to shorten this attack, and to specifically not let down the Iranian population. The Iranian population needs to be protected. The Middle East countries needs to be protected, and they must not be the field of this battle, and the peace must come back in a very quick way and a short way. And this is a responsibility of the US.
Mr. Taha, one final question, because we are running out of time now. Trump has said that he might engage in talks with Iran's interim leadership. How credible is a diplomatic track while major combat operations are taking place?
I don't know why Trump is bargaining with Iranian officials. He said that he is ready to get calls from opposition leaders, and that they are ready to have negotiations with him, but he said that he will not be releasing the names of those opposition leaders that have contacted him. And yeah, he is just trying to shake things up internally in Iran. This is how he thinks it's done, but it is not actually. Things to and it need to to go legally according to laws and so on. And Trump knows that the longer the war goes on, the broader it gets, and it actually harms lots of countries and lots of benefits. And one of those benefits is actually the U.S. benefits, and it can really cause harm to the U.S. citizens and U.S. officials. And so if they have that much money to spend on war, then I don't know how his policy works. He should have directed that money to other things. And so war is getting broader by the second. And so are we waiting for a statement from Trump saying that they will silence Iran or overthrow the current regime? I don't know on what basis did he say what he said. He has even cancelled out the Security Council, and even in Geneva, he said that the United Nations is now weak. It cannot end wars, cannot intervene with wars, and it is just not how it used to be before.
Yes.
And so he just canceled out the UN, the Security Council, and he said that it is up to him now. And he's also been trying in any way to get Britain as an ally. So
Yes, well, we will, Mr. Taha, we will be following up more of these developments and see who else comes into the equation of the ongoing conflicts. Dr. Majid Boudin, the international law professor, and Mr. Talat Taha, the political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you both for being part of our special coverage. We will be keeping you updated with all the developments taking place in this file, but that's all the time we have for this special coverage of the hour. And now we turn to our top stories with Pasant Shahata. Please don't go away.
Thank you, Hani. You're still watching Qnews, bringing you the latest regional and international developments. Here are the top stories making headlines this hour. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has highlighted Egypt's diplomatic efforts to mediate between the United States and Iran, aiming to prevent escalation. President el-Sisi emphasized that Egypt, as part of the region, is directly affected by current crises and firmly rejects any aggression against neighboring countries. He warned of the wide-ranging consequences of war on regional stability, trade, and strategic choke points like the Suez Canal and Strait of Hormuz. He stressed the importance of national unity, preparedness, and resilience, reassuring citizens that Egypt has taken precautions to mitigate economic and security impacts. He reaffirmed Egypt's support for Arab and Gulf partners while advocating for de-escalation and dialogue as the path to peace. U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that most of Iran's top military leadership has been neutralized, describing the operation as one of the most complex offensive actions undertaken by the United States. He confirmed that military strikes will continue until all objectives are achieved, warning that Iran's long-range missiles and nuclear capabilities pose a serious threat to Americans. Trump suggested the possibility of pausing strikes if Tehran meets U.S. demands through negotiations. He acknowledged additional U.S. military losses and expected further casualties during the operation, estimating the campaign could last up to 4 weeks. Trump urged Iranians to seize the moment to reclaim their country, affirming U.S. support while framing the operation as ultimately beneficial for global security.
Even thousands of Americans on his hands and was responsible for the slaughter of countless thousands of innocent people all across many countries. Last night, all over Iran, the voices of the Iranian...
The Arab League has called on Iran to immediately halt all escalatory actions and exercise restraint to prevent widening the conflict. In a joint statement, member states strongly condemned Iran's attacks on Arab territories, describing it as flagrant violations of international law, principles of good neighborliness, and regional stability. The Arab League emphasized that the security of Arab states is indivisible and rejected any infringement on sovereignty under any pretext. It urged Iran to act responsibly to avoid severe consequences. The statement also praised diplomatic efforts by Egypt, Oman, Qatar, and other friendly neighbors aimed at de-escalating tensions and highlighted the importance of continuing dialogue to safeguard peace and stability in the region. And that brings us to the end of our top stories for now. Stay with us for continued updates, expert analysis, and the latest developments right here on Qnews.
And welcome back to our special coverage as we continue closely monitoring the rapidly unfolding developments across the region, bringing you the latest updates, key reactions, and in-depth analysis of the ongoing military and political tensions shaping events on the ground. A source told Reuters that Saudi Aramco has shut down its refinery in Ras Tanura as a precautionary measure after it was targeted by a drone attack. And media outlets had reported that an Aramco refinery in Ras Tanura was struck by a drone as part of repeated attacks on several cities in the region. The Kuwait Ministry of Defense announced that a number of U.S. military aircraft have crashed with all crew members surviving. In a statement, the ministry said that search and rescue procedures began immediately after the aircraft went down, and the crews were evacuated and transported to hospital to check on their condition and provide the necessary medical care. It added that direct coordination took place with friendly U.S. forces regarding the circumstances of the incident and the adoption of joint technical measures. The British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper affirmed support for a defensive operation that includes the use of the British bases by the US forces. And the UK Foreign Secretary added that there is a significant threat from Iran not only to the region but also at the international level. The Israeli army spokesperson has announced that the Air Force is actively intercepting Iranian missiles and targeting launch platforms while conducting offensive operations across Lebanon, Iran, and other fronts. And he accused Hezbollah of initiating attacks and warning the group would face severe consequences. He added that the Israeli forces affirmed readiness for a potential multi-front war and confirmed preparations for all defensive and offensive scenarios. The Israeli army spokesperson said that around 100,000 reserve soldiers have been mobilized as part of the heightened military readiness. And he also stated that hundreds of aircraft are carrying out strikes in Lebanon and Iran, adding that senior Hezbollah commanders were targeted with assessments of the operation's outcomes still underway. And he said that Israel emphasized continued efforts to ensure the protection of residents in the northern areas. And for further analysis, we are joined from Cairo by the Iranian affairs researcher, Mr. Ali Atif. Welcome, sir, to Qnews. Sir, how do you view the ongoing escalation in the region so far?
Good morning to you and to everyone who's watching us. Just over the past day, the second day of the U.S.-Israeli-Iran war, it is now clear that this war is regional, and we've seen Iran attack some areas, not just those with U.S. bases in the Gulf countries, but they are attacking some neighboring countries, and proxies or armed proxies in the region have also gotten involved, like Hezbollah in Lebanon. They've entered the war, and also some armed proxies in Iraq. And so I think that targeting the Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is a crucial point here that has led to a fast and a great escalation. And so, as I said, I think that the war is now regional.
And Sir, Reuters revealed that an oil refinery belonging to the Saudi Aramco in Ras Tanura area was targeted. How do you see this dangerous development?
Yeah, there is a very important point here, which is the Iranian regime thinks that this is about survival. This war is about survival, and so this is why they've been trying to just explore all their options and to use them in this war to pressure the U.S. international community or even the neighboring countries. And so, as I just said, this war is about survival now. And so for those researching in Iran's internal affairs, Iran's top priority now is keeping the regime and not having it overthrown. And so all these military operations and Iranian strikes on other countries are basically so this is why they are broadening their operations. But I think that attacking other sites will have more international pressure on their back now, and we've seen European countries like Britain and France entering the confrontation, especially after a British bases in Cyprus.
Yes, actually, Mr. Atif, that's my next question. What is your comment on the British Foreign Secretary's statements regarding allowing the United States to use its military base to strike Iran?
Yeah, this is what I was just talking about. Iran has attacked European interests and Arab ones in the region, and so this actually causes them to have more pressure on a military and political level. Britain is ready to get involved in the military operations against Iran now, and it's taken Israel's and the U.S. side, and they have sent aircrafts to get ready for military operations against Iran. And so I don't think that Iran will be able to endure all of these international great forces. And so this is, as I said, a dangerous scenario for Iran.
Sir, how do you assess the serious escalation in Lebanon following the launching of rockets by Hezbollah towards Israel?
Hezbollah in Lebanon has said that the Supreme Leader's death is a turning point for them. And that they have Iran's side now, and so all the armed factions that follow Iran in the region, like Houthis or Hezbollah, they are really aware that overthrowing the Iranian regime will lead to eradicating them, basically. And so I think that they will be using their arms. They'll be fighting tooth and nail, because, as I just said, this is a matter of survival now, both for Iran and for Iran's proxies in the region. And so I think that we will see further escalation.
Do you think there's any hope of any negotiations, maybe in the near future, to stop the ongoing war in the region?
U.S. President Donald Trump has said that Iran has contacted him regarding negotiations, on this war, but I don't think that negotiations are an option now, and especially after the latest escalations and Iran strikes against the U.S. and having some U.S. soldiers killed. Things have escalated rapidly over the past few hours, and things have actually crossed the turning back point, especially for the U.S. and Israel. They've endured so much losses over the past few hours, and so, as I said, there is no going back now, and I don't think that negotiations are an option.
And do you think we can see a significant, maybe, widening of the war in the region?
Yeah, definitely. This is what we can see from the scenario over the past few hours. There are Iranian strikes over some neighboring countries in the Gulf region, and these strikes are still ongoing, actually. And then Iran has also entered the confrontation, and through some factions. Lebanon as well is involved now, and I think that the Houthis can also get involved heavily in the upcoming hours, and so I think that the Middle East will reach a point of instability that it hasn't reached in decades, and this will be such a dangerous and a crucial turning point.
Mr. Atif, what is your comment on Israel's announcement of launching a military operation against Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Yeah, I think that Israel's statement, Israel has postponed ending Hezbollah's military capabilities, and there was this agreement that they signed in 2024, and what's happening simultaneously with the war in Gaza, and so this is why Israel has postponed ending Hezbollah's capabilities for later. But I think that they will be taking advantage of the strike that Hezbollah has launched, and they will be trying to just end their and eradicate their military capabilities, especially after they know that they support Iran now. But I think that there is something that's more important now. Can Israel carry out different military operations in the east and the west, and even in the south, in Iran, in Lebanon, and if the Houthis get involved as well, there are a lot of confrontation lines that Israel needs to strike. This is also very important.
And from Cairo, that was Mr. Ali Atif, the Iranian affairs researcher. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News. And media outlets reported hearing explosions in the Qatari capital Doha and in the Emirati city of Dubai. And they added that the explosions were the result of air defense systems intercepting missiles launched towards Doha and Dubai. And moving on, the U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that most of Iran's top military leadership has been neutralized, describing the operation as one of the most complex offensive actions undertaken by the United States. He confirmed that military strikes will continue until all objectives are achieved, warning that Iran's long-range missiles and nuclear capabilities pose a serious threat to the Americans. And Trump suggested the possibility of pausing strikes if Iran meets the U.S. demands through negotiations. He acknowledged additional U.S. military losses and expected further casualties during the operation, estimating the campaign could last up to 4 weeks. And Trump urged the Iranians to seize the moment to reclaim their country, affirming U.S. support while framing the operation as ultimately beneficial for global security.
Responsible for the slaughter of countless thousands of innocent people all across many countries.
Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has highlighted Egypt's diplomatic efforts to mediate between the United States and Iran, aiming to prevent escalation. President Sisi emphasized that Egypt, as part of the region, is directly affected by the current crises and firmly rejects any aggression against neighboring countries. He warned of the wide-ranging consequences of war on regional stability, trade and strategic choke points like the Suez Canal and the Strait of Hormuz. He stressed the importance of national unity, preparedness and resilience, reassuring citizens that Egypt has taken precautions to mitigate economic and security impacts. He reaffirmed Egypt's support for the Arab and Gulf partners while advocating for de-escalation and dialogue as the path to peace. Egypt closely monitors rising military tensions, expressing solidarity with the Arab nations, urging diplomacy and activating national measures to safeguard security and critical infrastructure. And for further analysis, we are joined from Cairo by the consultant at Egypt's Command and Staff College, Major General Osama Mahmoud Kabir. Welcome, sir, to Qnews.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask you, how do you assess Egypt's diplomatic approach towards the current regional military escalation?
Yeah, right. See what happened within the last couple of years, and the Egyptian diplomatic role have been played by the political headquarters and the respective officials and systems within the country. It's very important because we understand totally by the end the war case is not a key to solve this problem. What's happening now in Iran is very dangerous, and as you can see within the last 48 hours, it's a very short time. The scale is getting larger and larger and quickly. It's like a circle that is getting wider and wider, like quickly, and now it does strike the Middle East province in a very large scale. See what's happening. The political leadership yesterday spoke about that, and he emphasized on unless the diplomatic resolutions, let's get to the table again and put the papers there, let's talk, or otherwise the whole area will be burned up. If you can see now, the Iranians are targeting like British targets in Cyprus, and they are stressing their strikes now on the GCC countries. And also they are bombarding and shelling Israel and some military assets from South America within the Gulf Arabs. Now the Iranians trying to pull much people, like to get them involved in sake of to push on the United States of America and to stress on them to stop this sort of war. So the diplomacy is still there. Egypt is a pillar, is a spearhead, is a great mediator within the last couple of years for the Gaza catastrophe. And also we played this role since the last 3 months to the Iranian catastrophic situation, plus Oman and Turkey. So again, there is a chance. There will always be a chance. You need to get back. We need to make ends meet all together. A point of rapprochement, a point of converge in between the counterparts. And let's get done with this before this sort of fire will burn everyone within the Middle East.
Yes.
That's my perception about that.
Sir, can you tell us a little bit, what does the emphasis of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on de-escalation reflect about Egypt's regional security doctrine?
Exactly, and it is a continuous emphasis and continuous reflection, because he spoke about the Canal Suez yesterday. As you understand, in the fiscal year of 24-25, Egypt have lost something like $7 billion US dollars because of the Houthis, like they're striking on Israel, and Israel are retaliating on Houthis. In that case, so the floating chips, I mean the blue economy within the Bab el-Mandeb state actually had been diminished to the half almost. So we lost something like $7 billion in a time that we didn't need to lose $1. And secondly, now what's happening in Hormuz Strait now, because as you understand, if the oil shipments like stopped, that would affect the whole world. And this oil shipments are moving from the Hormuz actually all the way down to the Red Sea again, from the Red Sea, from south all the way to the north to Canal Suez. So we are expecting to lose much more money because of the Houthis, and in this time because of the Hormuz military operations taking place there. So this is very dangerous, and the president yesterday, he tried to enlighten that and to highlight on that and to emphasize. So there's economic implications. And secondly, the safety implications, because it's the Arabic region. Even though we don't have borderlines with the GCC countries, but it's something that would be called the safety belt. And the safety belt is affected, so will be affected even after a short time from us happening there.
Sir, how significant is Egypt's mediation effort between the U.S. and Iran in preventing a wider conflict?
Very hard, very high and with significant scale. Egypt's diplomatic role is pivotal, main. No one could deny that. At the end, everybody would love to come here and ask and take the experience. We are a border country for Gaza, for Israel, and we negotiated with those people 50 years ago, and we know how to negotiate with them, and we understand the Palestinian psychology, as well as we are the mother of the Arab lands, and we know how to talk with the Americans. And you see what happened in Sharm el-Sheikh. Finally, everyone came here to Egypt to sign that agreement of ceasefire, unless the continuous Israeli violations against the ceasefire. So in Egypt, you have the experience, you have the history, you have the modality, you have the people who are pretty much keening and willing to stop this sort of scourge striking within the Middle East province, and it might take like too many countries inside that. So it's at the large scale, and we're still continuing to do that. And we have the officials and respectives capable and competent and efficient enough to run such problems like those one, unless the counterparts wouldn't listen to that. So that would be a big problem in the very near future.
Yeah. From a strategic perspective, can you tell us why does Egypt consistently prioritize the political and diplomatic solution during crises?
Right, because so what's the end state of any war that took place after the Second World War? Nothing. I mean, look what happened when the U.S. Intervened in Afghanistan or in Iraq. What happened to the Middle East? What happened to the other countries? We have Iraq now is almost like a weak country. 25 years now we are trying to push on Iraq and start to bolster them and to support them to make sure that they will be back again and still hard a little bit. See what's happening of the war in the last couple of years, like war took place in Gaza Strip. Now we have a catastrophic situation. We have more than 80 people got killed and 150,000 severely injured. I mean, Egypt understands very much well that diplomatic situation within this period of time, within this era where the AI and the technology and the asymmetric warfare is taking place, this is very dangerous. So instead of that, you need to go through this channel route. Let's talk. Let's resolve those problems and put some good resolutions. Let's skip this kind of more than dignity speaking about or to be arrogant. More. No, you need to get to the table and see, understand, look, what's the most beneficial for your people within your country or other than look what's happening in Israel now. People by millions in the shelters under the ground. So why did you launch that, strike that war? And it's happening also now in the GCC. And
Yes.
Tehran is under attack. I mean, it's like, as I told you, a circle of fire getting larger scale quickly and rapidly. And we need to stop that. And the only thing is that to get to the diplomacy. And this is what the political leadership spoke about yesterday.
Yeah. Major General Kabir, how does Egypt balance solidarity with Arab partners while avoiding direct military involvement?
Would you repeat the second part of the question, please? Because
yes, I'm trying to tell you to what extent how does Egypt balance solidarity with the Arab partners while avoiding direct military involvement?
Again, ma'am, it's something that's related to the Egyptian psychology and the Egyptian history and experience. But we are a great country with a great army. We come at the club of the 15s, the very first 15 army all over the world, and we have this sort of what we can call that we have diversities within our armament system, which has been pretty much clear within the last 10 years. So we are good, we are strong, and we are wise at the same time. So we are balancing this solidarity with our relationships with the GCC countries and Arab countries, not only those, but also with the Western countries, the European Union or the African Union, with the United States of America. We are like a gyro, the gyroscope, which is the very, very, very important piece of device or that very important component, which is keeping the balancing for the issue to stay stable and not to sink. So I think we are going in a good steps, unless that the last war now, it's very harshing to the Middle East. It's having much more problems. So within that, within quietness and cohesion situation in between the people of the Egyptians and the government, the political leadership, we're trying to balance that with the Arabs, the interior affairs, with the Europe, with the Western generically, with a good army we have, trying to come up with good resolutions to save the issue as much good as we can get. I think that's my perception about what you asked about.
Yeah. Sir, what implications could the prolonged conflict have on the Suez Canal and various global trade routes?
Yeah. On the Suez Canal, as I told you like a few minutes ago, that we lost the $7 billion within the last fiscal year. I think the implications is that it's a larger scale of casualties within the national income of the Suez Canal. If the Houthis start to strike again and start to target the vessels and ships passing through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and you can add to that the Hormuz Strait too, because the massive the size of the ships going to the Suez Canal with the talking about oil shipment now is going actually from the GCC country, Gulf Arabia to the way down to the Hormuz, all the way up again to the top. So it's very, very dangerous and very annoying, by the way. So I think we have some good scenarios like an alternatives for the expectations we might having within the war if it got escalated. So economically, it's very bad. Let's see what will happen, because it's going on. Degradation and deterioration in the events is pretty much faster than we can track it, actually.
Yes. Is Egypt prepared institutionally to manage spillover effects from regional wars? And if so, can you tell us how?
Egypt is constitutionally what, sir?
Is Egypt ready to manage the spillover or any effects from regional wars? And if it is, can you explain to us how? In what ways?
Yes. I would say that the Egyptian respective systems, sectors, ministers, officials are pretty much ready for the situation to escalate, to degrade, to deteriorate. Whatever. I think we have the scenarios and the most likely scenarios for the most course of action expected, and the alternative scenarios worst case scenarios. I think that we have good planning sectors here and officials competent enough and capable and very professional making those scenarios. And we are observing that. You see, we are observing, tracking, detecting all the actions taking place, the momentum on ground. So if something happened, like I think we have good scenario for that, the optimal resolution to intervene without that in it. So that's what I can say. How is that? It comes at the time when it happens, because this is like strategic high planning level, and things will be declared like when highly needed to do.
And from Cairo, that was Major General Osama Mahmoud Kabir, the consultant at Egypt's Command and Staff College. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Qnews. The Gulf Cooperation Council has strongly condemned Iran's missile and drone attacks and vowing to take all necessary measures to defend member states. The attacks targeting the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain and Jordan caused significant damage to the civilian infrastructure and residential areas, posing a direct threat to citizens' safety. The GCC emphasized that an attack on one member constitutes an attack on all, reaffirming the right to self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. While praising the professionalism of the member states' armed forces and air defenses, the Council warned of severe consequences if hostilities continue. It urged an immediate halt to attacks and called on the international community to condemn them, and stressed that diplomacy and dialogue remained the only path to regional security and stability. And for more updates on the latest developments, we now move to Pasant Shhaita in our newsroom. Pasant.
Thank you, Salma. Ladies and gentlemen, you're still watching Qnews, bringing you the latest regional and international developments. And here are the top stories making headlines this hour. Israeli airstrikes have targeted Lebanon's western Beqa, while rocket fire from southern Lebanon reached northern Israel. Footage indicates that the naval forces participated in strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs, which have now faced a third wave of heavy bombardment. That came as Israeli drones have been flying at low altitude over multiple areas in southern Lebanon, triggering violent explosions believed to be interceptive missiles. The escalating attacks have prompted civilians to flee from southern Lebanon toward Beirut. The situation remains tense as Israeli aircraft continue their operations over the south, intensifying fears of further escalation across the region. The Lebanese Ministry of Public Health announced that 31 people were killed and 149 wounded in Israeli airstrikes on southern Lebanon and Beirut's southern suburb. The Israeli army had earlier announced the launch of a new wave of airstrikes on areas in southern Lebanon and the southern suburb, in response to shelling that occurred in early hours of this morning. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has condemned the Israeli attacks on Lebanese territory, emphasizing that continued use of Lebanon as a platform for external conflicts exposes the country to serious risks. He strongly criticized the recent rocket launches from Lebanese soil, saying they undermine all state efforts to keep Lebanon away from dangerous regional confrontations. Aoun warned that such escalations threaten national security and impede diplomatic and defensive measures aimed at protecting Lebanon. He reiterated repeated calls for restraint, rational decision-making, and prioritizing the country's highest national interest to prevent further destabilization and ensure Lebanon's sovereignty amid rising tensions in the region. The Israeli army has announced that airstrikes across Lebanon will continue in the coming days, targeting Hezbollah positions nationwide. Authorities stressed that Israel will not allow Hezbollah to threaten its territory. That came as several projectiles fired from Lebanon have landed in open areas inside Israel, prompting heightened security measures. Israeli forces confirmed strikes on a Hezbollah operative in southern Lebanon and targeted senior members in Beirut, signaling an intensification of military operations. The Israeli army emphasized that these actions are part of a broad campaign to neutralize threats and deter further attacks, as tensions along the northern border remain at a critical level with potential for further escalation. Hezbollah has claimed responsibility for firing rockets and drones from Lebanon into Israel, stating the attacks were in response to the killing of Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei. Hezbollah described its actions as a legitimate defensive response and called on relative authorities to halt Israeli and American aggression against Lebanon. The announcement signals a direct escalation in the northern border conflict, heightening tensions across the region. Israeli and Lebanese authorities remain on alert as the situation unfolds, with both sides emphasizing preparedness amid fears of further attacks or retaliatory strikes. Hezbollah's statement frames the attacks as defensive while warning of consequences if hostiles continue. That brings us to the end of our top stories for now. Stay with us for continued updates, expert analysis, and latest developments right here on Qnews.
The Middle East stands at a historic crossroad after unprecedented joint US-Israeli strikes deep inside Iran, strikes that reportedly decapitated key elements of Tehran's leadership, and Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been confirmed killed by Iranian state media and external reports following aerial strikes. President Donald Trump says he has agreed to talks with what he calls Iran's new leadership. But what does talk really mean amid active combat operations? If the campaign was launched without congressional authorization and with limited regional consensus, what is the legal and political endgame? Is Washington pursuing deterrence, regime change, or leverage for negotiations? And if Iran retaliates across the region from the Gulf to Israel's borders, could this conflict spiral into a broader regional war? At stake is not only Iran's future, but America's global posture and President Trump's legacy. These are all questions we will be answering in this special coverage on Qnews. I'm Henny Saif. Stay tuned. Now, as oil prices jumped sharply on Monday amid the escalating conflict in the Middle East threatening global energy supplies, after US and Israeli strikes on Iran, Brent crude briefly surged over 13%, settling about 7% higher in London trading. The narrow Strait of Hormuz, a key transit for roughly a fifth of the world's oil, saw activity slow to near standstill amid heightened tensions. Tehran's retaliation against Gulf neighbors has also raised fears for critical regional pipelines and export facilities. Investors fled to safe havens, lifting gold prices and bolstering the US dollar, while major Asian stock markets slumped. Analysts warned that prolonged disruption to flows through Hormuz could push energy markets into greater volatility, with inflationary risks for economies worldwide. Global commodity markets are bracing for sharp price rises as conflict in the Middle East disrupts energy supplies and trade routes, with the Strait of Hormuz effectively blocked after military action involving the US, Israel, and Iran. The strait, a conduit for roughly 30% of seaborne oil and a fifth of global gas exports, has seen tanker traffic suspended, triggering panic pricing across energy markets. Higher energy costs are rapidly transmitting into broader commodity chains, pushing up production and transport costs for agricultural products. Analysts warned that fertilizer shortages resulting from halted shipments through Hormuz could lift prices of wheat, corn, and soybeans, driving a new wave of food inflation worldwide. Economists say sustained disruption could embed inflation in global markets, fueling broader cost increases for basic goods and putting pressure on central banks to tighten policy. Global inflation fears are intensifying as oil prices surge sharply following US and Israel military strikes on Iran, rattling markets and threatening economic stability worldwide. Investors price in risks to energy supplies from the strategic Strait of Hormuz, a route carrying about one-fifth of the world's crude and gas exports. The spike in oil and energy costs is feeding through to broader inflation indicators as higher fuel prices increase transportation, manufacturing, and commodity costs globally. Central banks that had been eyeing interest rate cuts are now reconsidering policy, as elevated energy costs could slow progress in controlling inflation. Economists warn that if the conflict persists and supply disruptions deepen, inflationary pressures could strengthen, pushing up prices for consumers and businesses and complicating economic recovery efforts. In a phone call from Mar-a-Lago, President Trump told journalist Michael Scherer that Iran's new leadership wants to talk and that he has agreed. Yet even as those words were spoken, US and Israeli air operations continued targeting missile infrastructure, command centers and security installations inside Iran. Reports suggest the strikes aimed not only to degrade Iran's nuclear and missile capabilities, but also to weaken the political core of the regime. The president has even floated the possibility of immunity for members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard if they laid down their arms. But is this calibrated coercion or open-ended regime change? To examine the US calculus and the regional implications, we're joined tonight from Pennsylvania by Mr. Melik Francis, the political analyst, and from Iowa by Mr. Newman Abu-Isa, the political analyst on US affairs. Gentlemen, welcome to the Q News special coverage. Mr. Francis, what do you make of President Trump saying that he has agreed to talk while the bombing campaign continues? Is this negotiation through strength or strategic ambiguity?
Good morning and best regards to you and to the honored guest and the viewers. As you know, that it's hard really to trust President Trump. He says one thing and he does the opposite. We wish that he will sit down with Iranian representatives and to end the war, because it's not going to serve anyone's interest but the Israelis. President Trump made a mistake by attacking the Republic of Iran, because the negotiations were working, and last meeting Kushner, Woodcock, and the Iranian foreign minister were doing very well, and they both claimed it was a positive meeting and they were supposed to meet again. However, as you know and everybody knows, the Israelis put pressure on President Trump because this war is going to benefit them. As you know, that Iran is the only nation in the Middle East that is capable of standing up to Israelis' aggression, Israel alone. But unfortunately now you have United States and Israel together bombing Iran, and it's going to be very difficult really for the Iranian regime to defend itself from the American and Israeli aggression. As you know, one school was hit, many school children were killed. 3 American soldiers were dead. And what is Trump going to tell their families? That we are there fighting and killing our young men and women for the interests of Israel and of the oil? This is unacceptable. And as you know, President Trump is sent our troops to that area in violation of the U.S. Constitution, but he doesn't care. He never obeyed any law or the Constitution of the United States. Yes, this week, the Congress will meet to vote on a resolution really against President Trump, but he has the veto power. So you need 2/3 of the Senate in order to really abolish the veto. So we're in a very bad situation, and America and the American people are not benefit from the war. It's going to cost us billions of American dollars and American lives.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Abu-Isa, how significant is the leadership vacuum in Tehran? I mean, we've heard of the killing of the Iranian supreme leader and Iranian officials, but is there evidence of regime fragmentation of whoever is left right now?
Greetings. Yes, the target of this war is targeting the leadership of the regime in Iran. The purpose of this war is not gaining on some of the negotiating points like the nuclear file or the missile file, like the United States was negotiating with Iran as of last Thursday. And they were going to meet again Monday, today, to continue the negotiation. But the United States has agreed to the Israeli objective is to degrade the regime in Iran, to allow the regime change by having an uprising by the public. Of course, decapitating or killing dozens of the leadership in Iran in this war, and also in the 12-day war last time, where the Israelis killed many military leadership at that time. The Iran regime was able to withstand and recover from the June attacks at that time, and they were able to continue striking the depths of Israel like they are doing now, and also striking American targets in surrounding Arab countries. And up to this point, there is no indication if this war is going to be continue and last for a long time, which weakens the aggressors, or it's going to be a quick war which ends with quick negotiation, and going back to a similar agreement to what happened in 2016. So that is the preferred outcome, and that's what President Trump is hinting, that the negotiations are still possible, even though he's using the hammer at the same time as saying that the Iranians want negotiation, but there is no really indication from the Iranian side that they want negotiation this time. They did say before this war started that this war will not be a short war, and it will not be confined to Iran. So they want an expanded war, and that's what we saw in Lebanon yesterday by exchanging fire with the Israelis from South Lebanon, and Israel hitting back. So there is a chance. I mean, none of the Middle East wars are easy, and none of them end in the desired outcome as the parties. So they have life of their own usually, and we don't know exactly how this war is going to expand. And this is now today is the market is opening again, and the business is coming back. We'll see how the Congress reacts to this war, and the market reacts to this war.
Yes, well, the international community is also very much concerned with the economic ramifications of this conflict. Mr. Francis, what realistically are the risks that a prolonged energy shock pose to the global economic growth and the financial markets?
It will hurt the economy worldwide, especially American economy here, because our economy has been deteriorating under President Trump, who promised to take care of the economy. And he, as you know, he promised to be the president of peace, but he's doing the opposite. Every time the price of oil goes up, everything goes up. And as you know, the Strait of Hormuz, about 20% of the worldwide oil go through that area, and by closing it, it's going to affect the European economy, even the Middle Eastern economy. So it's not really a good sign, and that's why I hope that President Trump will come to his senses, because when George Bush Jr. attacked Iraq, he was against it. And he promised not to do it, and the United States should not be in a long war, and our men and women should not die. Unfortunately, now they are dying for Israel, and that's really the biggest problem we have. And I'm waiting for President Trump to, when he talks to the families of the dead soldiers, what's he going to tell them? They died for America? No, they did not die for America. They died for the interests of Israel. And this is unacceptable. President Trump like a sheep. He does whatever the Israelis tell him. Yes, the Israeli lobby is very powerful, but he is the most powerful president in the world, and should do what's good for the interests of the United States and the American people. And he's hurting us Republicans, especially moderate Republican, because the midterm is coming soon, and I believe that Democrats are going to win the U.S. House and maybe the Senate. And if the Democrats, and I believe they will win, they will impeach him. And for the next 2 years, he won't be able to do anything. As you know, he doesn't respect any laws or the Constitution. Every day he issue an executive order against the Constitution, and the U.S. Supreme Court has been turning all of them almost down. So President Trump should be a president of the United States, not a servant of Israel or the Israeli lobby.
Yes. Mr. Abu Isa, how have global powers such as the European states, Russia, and China, that actually has a strong economic relationship with Iran, with the oil imports, how have the global powers responded to the air campaign on Iran? What impact might their positions have on the conflict's future trajectory?
As far as Europe, there's two outcomes. If the war is swift and there's degradation of the Iranian regime and Iran will need to rebuild, they want to position themselves as a participant in this war, and they want to part of the pie, if you would say, that they want to rebuild Iran in conjunction with the U.S. However, if this war is a prolonged war and the oil prices is increasing, they will suffer because their industry and they are energy dependent on oil, especially the Gulf oil, and that will impact them negatively. However, Russia is an oil producer, and they will be benefiting from the oil increased prices, and they welcome the prolonged of this war, especially when the U.S. is busy with the Gulf instead of busy supporting Ukraine, for example. So that is a plus for Russia. However, China depends heavily on imported oil, and they will have to absorb the impact of the increased oil prices, but they will also benefit from the American strategic convergence from being present in the East China Sea and the South China Sea to become more involved in the Middle East in a prolonged war in the Middle East, and that will relieve their pressure in Taiwan and in the East in East Asia. So it's really lots of issues going on. It's not a strategic war. It does not serve the United States strategically because the biggest challenge for the United States is China, and it's not the Middle East. And now many Middle Eastern countries are going to lose faith in the support of the United States if the United States is not able to protect them from the Iranian missiles.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Francis, now the President Trump has hinted at regime change. He said that Iran's new leadership wants to talk and that he has agreed. Is that an official objective or political rhetoric that is aimed at domestic audiences, be it the Iranian or the American audiences?
No, it's an objective of President Trump. He has been calling for a regime change. And believe it or not, many Arab nations, Arab leaders, want really regime change in Iran. And behind the scene, they are supporting the United States aggression against Iran. But regime change will not happen unless you send troops into Iran and occupy Iran. And I don't think President Trump is going to do it. The regime change comes from within Iran. And as you know, Iran is a very rich nation with different communities. You have the Kurds, you have Azerbaijani, you have the Christian, you have Jews, you have 60% of Iran population are not Persian, are not really Iranian, and they have been waiting for an opportunity to revolt against the regime. Yes, yesterday many Iranian leaders threatened the communities not to have demonstration against them. As you know, they will punish them. So regime change will not happen. The missiles and the bombs will not really force the Iranians to change the regime unless it comes from within Iran. And it's going to be very difficult because Iran still have a very strong army, very police institution that is very strong. And as you know, when the Iranian revolted against the regime, President Trump said we are coming. He did nothing for them. Thousands were killed or massacred. So yes, I think it's time for a new regime in Iran, a friendly regime to its Arab neighbors, because attacking the Arab neighbors, firing missiles at Dubai, at Qatar, at Saudi Arabia, this is a big mistake, because in the past those nations were really supporting the Iranian regime. So now I think Iran is like an orphan. It has no one to support it. Russia only talks. China will not do anything about it. So I think they have really to think about maybe working with the Trump administration, but they don't trust him. He's not really a man you could trust. We had a good nuclear agreement from 2015. President Obama worked hard on it. Unfortunately, 2018, President Trump, at the direction of the Israelis, abolished that agreement. It was a big mistake. We won't be here if President Obama sent the agreement to the Congress for approval. Then no president could abolish it. So mistakes were made in the past, and President Trump now, I think, he is making big mistakes, and he's hurting us and our interest, not only in the Middle East, all over the world.
Mr. Abu Isa, how significant is the fact that these strikes, the American strikes, reportedly were launched or proceeded without explicit congressional authorization? What does it say about the American political spectrum, and what does the American public opinion or the international public opinion has to say about this?
It's very significant, and the President Trump has initiated this war on very early in the morning Saturday to make sure that the Congress is out of session. And now the Congress is trying to call for an immediate return to session to debate this war. President Trump does not want a debate for this war. He wants to have it on his way, because he knows that the American public is against this war. In the tune of 80% of the American public is against this war, and only a small minority of the Americans are supportive of this war. And this is very significant also because this year in the U.S. is an election year, and there will be election in November, and the campaigns will be starting soon after this war now, and that's why he probably wants to have the quick end to this war, because as soon as the spring arrives, the campaign will be in full swings in the United States. And as my colleague said, that the Democrats will have the upper hand if this war is a long-term war, degrading the trust in the American capability in the Middle East. And if Iran was able to survive this initial attack and continue launching missile attacks on American interests in the area and on Israel, and that will be a clear failure of the objective of this war to have a regime change. But regime change is not easy. It does not happen in days or weeks. It takes years to degrade the army and the guards in Iran, and to be able to allow an alternative to the current government to get established, and to be able to revolt against the current government. So it's maybe a long-term objective objective to degrade and replace the Iranian regime, but it's unlikely that it will happen very fast, like Mr. Trump or Netanyahu wish that this will happen, that the Iranian government will switch its positions and become a pro-American government, allowing basically giving security to Israel and allowing American companies to invest in the Iranian oil fields and gas fields. And this is the wishful thinking. We'll see what happens in next week.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Francis, what do you think about the rapid escalation to direct military strikes, including obvious high-profile targets? What does it reveal about U.S. executive and congressional dynamics when it comes to authorizing large-scale use of force abroad?
Really, it's unethical for any nation to assassinate the leaders of another nation, but we know that President Trump doesn't care, and the war criminal, the Prime Minister of Israel, is a criminal. He loves murdering people, unfortunately, and the war now, I think, is going to go on for a few more weeks. Now Hezbollah attacked Israel yesterday. In response, Israel is attacking Lebanon. It may occupy maybe south of Lebanon up to the Litani River or the Awali River, by Saida, my hometown. And if the Iraqi militias attacks American institution, American bases, or the American embassy, then you have another front, Iraq. The Houthi in Yemen, if they start attacking ships in the Hormuz Strait, so it's not really an easy one. It's a can of worms has been opened by Israel, and with the help and assistance of our president, that he promised during the campaign last year. He wants to make peace, and he's mad because he did not receive the Nobel Peace Prize because he claimed he stopped 8 wars. I don't know which war he stopped, really. Especially the one between Egypt and Ethiopia. There is no war between Egypt and Ethiopia, but he's starting wars all over the world. He took over Venezuela. He kidnapped the president of Venezuela, and that's really against international law, but he destroyed international law because he has the Trump's law now with the Board of Peace. It's a joke, really. And he wants $1 billion from every nation that wants to become a member. And he appointed himself the president of the Board of Peace for life. This is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, many nations are afraid of him, or they need favor from him. That's why they joined the Board of Peace of President Trump. And really, I have high regards of Mr. Woodcock, because I believed he had a chance really to bring peace to Gaza. There is some kind of peace, but the war is still going on. And he had good relationship with Iranian representatives. However, President Trump sent his son-in-law not to represent the United States. Kushner has been representing Israel because he's an Israeli citizen, and Benjamin Netanyahu is a good friend of the Kushners. Anytime Netanyahu used to come to New York, he stayed at their homes. So Kushner cannot be an honest broker or a representative of the United States.
Well, Mr. Francis, do you think this conflict would strengthen Trump's strengthen him domestically if perceived as decisive leadership, or would it have the opposite reaction?
No, it already hurt him big time because, as my colleague said, the midterm election, I think, is coming. And next November, I think, the Iran war will be an issue, I think, a campaign issue against President Trump and the economy and other stuff. So I think it hurts him big time for the rest of his administration, because the war now is he's fighting the Israeli war. And Israel, as I said, is going to benefit from this war. It's going to cost us billions. And who's going to pay for the Israeli expenses? We are the taxpayers. We need the money here. So it will cost billions. Those billions are needed here. Our young men and women cannot afford to college. We give Israel billions. They have free college education and free health care. We have neither here in the United States. We're wasting the money on killing innocent civilians in Iran, and Benjamin Netanyahu is laughing. He's happy because it will help him now temporarily before the Israeli Supreme Court really send him to prison in the future. And that's why he doesn't want to stop the war. He's using it as an excuse not to go to any hearing. Every time the Israeli Supreme Court invite him for a hearing, he finds a reason or an excuse not to attend. So it's helping Israel more than it's helping United States. And for the first time in the history of United States, as my colleague said, about 80% are against the war. Young 20% who are megas.
Yes, this conflict is definitely having its own economic repercussion, not just internationally, but also domestically in the U.S. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Melik Francis from Pennsylvania, and from Iowa, it was Mr. Newman Abu Isa. Gentlemen, thank you both for your insights during this critical and rapidly evolving moment. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for our special coverage, but for more updates on the latest developments, we now move to Pasant Shahata in our newsroom. Pasant.
Thank you, Hani. The French Foreign Minister has stated that France is prepared to participate in defending Gulf states following Iranian attacks on its base in the United Arab Emirates. He stressed that the Iranian regime must halt its aggressive actions and make substantial concessions to achieve a political resolution. He underscored the urgent need to stop military escalation in the region and called for immediate efforts to de-escalate tensions. France affirmed its commitment to supporting Gulf allies while pursuing diplomatic channels to prevent further conflict, highlighting both the security threats posed by Iranian operations and the importance of stabilizing the region through negotiations and restraint. The Director General of the IAEA has warned that a potential radiological leak in Iran cannot be ruled out amid escalating regional tensions. He emphasized the critical importance of exercising the highest levels of restraint to prevent any nuclear-related accidents. He stressed that all parties must prioritize safety protocols and responsible conduct around nuclear facilities to avoid triggering a humanitarian or environmental crisis. A source told Reuters that Saudi Aramco has shut down its refinery in Ras Tanura as a precautionary measure after it was targeted by a drone attack. Media outlets had reported that an Aramco refinery in Ras Tanura was struck by a drone as part of repeated attacks on several cities in the region. The Kuwait Ministry of Defense announced that a number of U.S. military aircraft have crashed, with all crew members surviving. In a statement, the ministry said that search and rescue procedures began immediately after the aircraft went down. The crews were evacuated and transported to hospitals to check on their condition and provide the necessary medical care. It added that direct coordination took place with friendly U.S. forces regarding the circumstances of the incident and the adoption of joint technical measures. The British Foreign Secretary has affirmed support for a defensive operation that includes the use of British bases by US forces. The UK Foreign Secretary added that there is a significant threat from Iran not only to the region but also at the international level. As the situation continues to evolve, today's developments surrounding the US-Israeli strikes on Iran mark a pivotal and uncertain moment for the region and the world. The hours ahead will be critical as leaders weigh their next moves and diplomatic efforts race to prevent a broader confrontation. This has been our special coverage for today. We will continue to follow every development closely, bringing you confirmed updates, expert analysis, and live reporting as this story unfolds. Stay with us here on Qnews.